I've seen a number of people talking about the March patch notes, and they talk about the skill system changes, but they haven't really gone into any detail. Some have said I'm going to do that at a later time, but it's going to take some more analysis. But so far, I haven't seen anyone actually cover it, so I decided I'd go ahead and do that. I've looked at it in great detail, and I can't say I fully understand it because these patch notes do have errors in them. I mean, not just grammatical errors, there's things that are literally wrong. For example, it says before there were 32 total things you could pick, nodes in the skill trees total. And now there's 38. So you can use that to check, and when you're done, are there 38 nodes in this tree? And if there's not 38 nodes, then something's wrong. And what it generally boils down to is they didn't tell us everything that's changed. They can't have told us everything that's changed. And they just kind of were giving us a bit of a very high altitude view. I've made heavy use of newworldbuilds.com/builder, which is basically, it comes up like this. And what you do is you get down here to the weapons and you pick a weapon, and then you can get to the tree as of the preview event. So this is old information. It's not up to date. But a combination of this plus paying attention to what they've changed and the patch notes, you can kind of build some things. So I built my own graphics for this. They're really fancy MS Paint graphics. And that's just trying to track what changed. So the sword tree has been renamed to Swordmaster. The shield tree has been renamed to Defender. Now here's what we see. I do believe there's errors on this tree. But they said for our actives, we have Whirling Blade. The spinning attack hits all nearby targets 360 degrees. That's what it always did. Whirling Blade causes 20% rend for 5 seconds, and rend reduces the target's armor. And then the last upgrade for that now does Whirling Blade reduces its cooldown by 10% for each enemy hit. So it's different than it used to be. Then Reverse Stab has been also changed. It's 175% weapon damage, has an upgrade that it adds grit to the attack, which means you aren't interrupted. It makes you uninterruptible for the attack. You can still die, but you're uninterruptible. I put a circle here that represents that they added a ultimate. And I'm just trying to present the information in the patch notes in a more clear way. On a successful hit with a Reverse Stab, all sword cooldowns are reduced by 35%. And then Ultimate Stab is the last upgrade for that. And it increases Reverse Stab's damage by 25%. That's pre-existing. Leaping Strike, they killed those two upgrades and changed it completely. Leap toward a target and strike for big damage. That's what it does. Then Final Strike is the first upgrade, deal 50% more damage if you hit a foe below 30% health. So if the foe has less than 30% health, you hit for 50% more damage. And Cowardly Punishment, it causes slow. So it reduces their target's movement for 10 seconds if Leaping Strike hits a target in the back. Also, they said that they added Empowered Stab, Achilles Heel, Precision, Freeing Justice, Mobility, Opportunist, Critical Precision, and Confidence. They didn't tell us what these things do. They're just passives. And they also moved the ultimate from this tree over to this tree. So Leadership, which used to be over in the defense tree, is now in the sword tree. And that creates some very interesting build decisions because it used to really make a lot more sense to go on the defender side because you'd get leadership. So everybody around you, it's like 25 meters or 15 meters. Sorry, it's 15 meters. Everybody around you is getting 10% damage increase. So it makes a lot of sense to have that. But now it's over here. So you have some different decisions to make. Then on the defender tree, the general direction they went with things is this is your tank tree. They've made it much more focused on tanking. And again, the patch notes did not give us all the information. And I'm only Xing these out because they said specifically those are gone. I'm not confident that this is all completely accurate because it's just kind of weird. It doesn't really add up. It doesn't necessarily make sense. Okay, so Shield Bash. The first one's normal. And the second one does the same thing it used to, but they added another one called Intimidating Bash. Shield Bash greatly increases threat and deals 100% more damage. So you have another passive you can pick that doubles the damage and increases threat. So it's for tanking. And by the way, the damage on shields, as far as I've gathered from in a preview event, is based on the actual quality of your shield, not your sword, which is probably intuitive, but that's how that works. Shield Rush is your number 2. Rush forward and knock down targets with shield. Improve Rush on successful, this is the next upgrade. Upon a successful hit, enemies within 5 meters are weakened for 4 seconds. So weakened makes them do less damage. And then Intimidating Rush, on successful hit, all enemies within 5 meters are slowed for 3 seconds. So yeah, you can apply 2 debuffs. And that's interesting because some of the other trees work off of debuffs. So that could potentially be comboed cross tree where like more than one person is working together kind of thing. Cooperative play. But the old things, I probably should have put X's on them. They're gone. Then Final Stand. It reduces received damage by 30% for 8 seconds with a 45-second cooldown. So the cooldown has been greatly reduced. And instead of having the damage reduction based on your health, it's just a flat 30% with a default version. Then you have Final Countdown as a first upgrade. Damage reduction increased by 20% if hit points are below or greater than 50%. So as long as you're above half health, Final Stand gives you an extra 20% damage reduction, which is huge. So you're taking half damage while you're being hit. And then the last upgrade, Restoration, gain 15% health when Final Stand ends. So for it's basically a heal every 8 seconds, or after 8 seconds, and great damage reduction. It's very powerful. The new ultimate, since this ultimate's been moved over to the other tree, it's passive. It's called Defense Formation. While blocking, reduce damage to all other allies within 2 meters by 33%. So it's a massive damage reduction. Very good while you're blocking. However, it's only within 2 meters, so it's pretty tight. And they added on the shield, Final Blow, and Defensive Training. They didn't tell us what those do. I wish they had. So we don't really know enough about this tree yet, these 2 trees. But we do know this adds up. So this is the correct number. I think it's 38 masteries. Okay, on to the next one. Oh, by the way, it's important to notice because some of the notes, the way I found errors in them, is it talks about moving trees around. Well, there's always a 1, a 2, and a 3. And what I mean by that is there's an ability, an active that starts on the first row, and an active that starts on the second row, and an active that starts on the third row. Here, 1, 2, 3. There's always a 1, a 2, and a 3. Next tree, Hatchet. It's completely gutted. This is going to be hard to cover. Okay. So here you see we had a 1, a 2, and a 3. Okay, so the new actives, they didn't tell us where they are, so we're going to just guess. I guess I'm in the throwing tree first. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Wrong thing. Okay. Rending Throw applies rend to the target, causing them to take additional damage. So it's a throwing attack that when you activate it, it rends the target, makes them take more damage, it reduces their armor. Targeting Impact is the first upgrade, increases 20%, increased to 20% damage and 6 seconds if you're more than 8 meters away from your target. So I think I wrote that wrong. I think it means 20% damage increase if you're further away from the target. And a 6-second duration of the rend. Opportunistic Rending Throw deals 20% damage if the target has another debuff already. So this is using debuffs, and I showed you in the last tree there's a lot of things that apply debuffs. This is something that uses them. If they're active, you do 20% more damage with this. Second Wind, Rending Throw refreshes 20% faster if used on a target with another debuff already. I don't know whether this is a 1, 2, or 3, as in the row it starts at, but this is one of the abilities. I think I put them in the order that I thought they would be, so I think Rending Throw is your 1. I think Social Distancing is your 2, and you'll see they have clearly COVID on the brain. Frankly, I think it's kind of stupid, but whatever. Somebody had some dad jokes in here. Social Distancing is an ability that says throws an axe and dodge backwards, dealing 120% weapon damage and causing 15% slow for 3 seconds. Quick Power is the first upgrade. Increase your movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds if your target has an active debuff. So you only get that if your target is debuffed. And then Stay Back, slow increased to 25% for 4 seconds. Okay. So it's just a way of keeping people at distance. And then the last one, again, COVID overtones, Infected Throw. Throws an axe causing 130% weapon damage and causing disease and weakness for 5 seconds. So weakness just makes your whatever you hit with that hit weaker. It reduces their damage. Mortal Power increases the duration of the disease and weakness to 8 seconds if the target is below 30% health. And Aerial Transmission creates 3-meter disease area on impact that lingers for 3 seconds. And I think it's kind of silly to use current events as like a joke in your game design, because down the road, people aren't going to remember this, and this is just going to not make sense. But yeah, that's where they went with it. And as you can see, they gutted the tree completely. The new ultimate is a passive called Persistent Hindrance. Successful throwing hatchet hits exceed all debuff durations by 1 second. Or sorry, extend all debuff durations by 1 second. So any debuffs somebody has active, their debuffs get extended. I don't know if there's limits on that. I'm thinking there probably are, because otherwise that could get really ridiculous. Maybe there are. Also, should be mentioned, Aim Throw used to be this ability here, which had a tree, but now Aim Throw is a passive, and basically it turns your so it replaces block with an Aim Throw that deals 90% weapon damage. Hold right mouse button to enter aimed stance. Each throw consumes 30 stamina. So now instead of your right click being block, it's throw your hatchet. Interesting. I think that's a really good way to do it. I think that was a good decision. Critical Throw. This is a pre-existing one, but they changed it. Critical Throw. Thrown axes are now capable of triggering headshot or random critical hit. Also increases critical hit chance of all attacks by 5%. On fire, every third successfully thrown axe is guaranteed crit. Rejuvenating crits. Successful critical hits with light attacks or aimed throws regenerate 20 stamina. Refreshing throws. Light attacks and aim throws against targets with an active debuff reduce all cooldowns by 10%. Exploration. All attacks deal 10% additional damage to targets with an active debuff. Boot and Rally. Light attacks and aim throw regenerate 20 stamina when hitting targets with an active debuff. And notice the trend is this throwing tree does better against things that have active debuffs. So somebody who's doing throwing hatchets could pair up with somebody who's doing debuffs, and they could really cause some trouble. Adrenaline Rush. Dodging within 2 seconds of triggering an ability consumes 25% less stamina. My general thoughts on this tree, I'd have to play it to really know how it plays, but I could see this being abusable actually with the debuff increases, assuming there's not a limitation on that. I mean, you could just sit there pelting somebody with axes. If you have two guys that have this ability and you have like really debilitating debuffs, you could literally extend those forever and people wouldn't be able to even move. Like you could just effectively kite them. It's like a 3-man team or something. This could be pretty effective at completely shutting down a target. That said, 3-on-1, you should win. So I'm not sure that's a problem, really. And even numbers is where I start to say, okay, if even numbers, this always wins against everything, then it's definitely broken. The Berserk tree also gutted. Berserk, new abilities. It now applies a flat bonus of damage. They didn't say what the number is, probably because it's still changing. They're still tuning that, I would assume. On the Hunt, increases sprint speed by 20% while Berserk is active. That's basically a rename of something that was already there. Berserking Refresh heals for 30% of max hit points when Berserk ends. So it's kind of like the hit and heal thing, kill and heal, that it used to have, except it's only when Berserk ends. So it's an interesting take. It doesn't. I don't think that's going to be broken. I think it'll be weaker than what Berserk used to have, with healing with Purge and with it, whatever this was called, Rejuvenating Kills, I think it was called, was pretty strong. But this, I think, would be much weaker. Berserking Purge. Triggering Berserk removes all crowd control and stun effects, stun, slow, and root. So effectively they remove Purge. And I drew the lines to where these come in. So Berserk is the number 1. Feral Rush, which is a rename of Sprint Attack, is a number 2, but they've killed its actives, its previous upgrades. And Raging Torrent is the number 3 that replaces Purge. So that's what I'm explaining. They've taken the functionality of Purge, made it limited, and put it inside of Berserk with Berserking Purge. And that only happens when you trigger Berserk. And of course, there's other things that happen when you trigger Berserk, so it's considerably different. It's definitely going to play different. And yeah, the Berserk now, instead, it used to be you gained a damage increase as you got hit, but now it's just a flat damage bonus. Unstoppable Berserk. While in Berserk, you are unstoppable and cannot be interrupted. Now, they were not clear. In the previous tree, the ultimate was tied into the Berserk tree. So you had to have Berserk to get it, and you had to have at least 10 skill points selected on this side of the tree, this tree, to get it. And you can only select 19 skills, so you can't get the ultimate on both sides, is basically what that means. So you can only get this ultimate, you couldn't get both ultimates. So anyway, that said, the way they wrote it, it wasn't clear. I think this is a passive. The ultimate is Defy Death. The previous ultimate was tied into Berserk, and it was that while you were Berserk, you were immune to, you didn't die. You couldn't die. But now there's a new ultimate called Defy Death. Avoid death when you receive lethal damage, reduce health to 50, gain 4-second immortality, and a 60-second cooldown. So the fact that it has a global cooldown, or not global cooldown, internal cooldown, to me implies that it's a passive. So it's just kind of hanging out there when you have that ultimate. If you're outside of that 60 seconds, so it hasn't triggered in the last 60 seconds, and you die, then you won't be dead. You'll have 50 health, and you'll gain 4 seconds of immortality. It's still pretty powerful, and it's totally passive, it would appear. Okay, so that's that. Then they gave no names of passives listed and no descriptions of what they do. So I don't know what else they do. I can tell you how much of it there is, but I can't tell you what it is. So what I mean by that is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12. There's 12 skills on this side of the tree. And I forget what it normally needs to be, but basically much more than 12. There should be a bunch of passives here that aren't here. Whereas if you see over here, they listed what the passives are. So there you go. Should have had that math handy. I forgot to do that. Took a while to put this all together, and by the time I got back to it, I forgot all about it. This, on the other hand, I have documented totally differently, because this was from the content creator preview event, and this is the spear trees. So you have Zoner and Impaler, and who was it? I think it was Sir Medieval, or Sir Medieval made a video about the spear, and he went over each skill in the spear tree. And I sat there and screenshotted repeatedly and pasted them all and made myself a tree. So I built this tree from his video, basically, and now I've updated it from the patch notes. Yeah, so this might be helpful, just looking at this in conjunction with the patch notes to understand what's changed. Generally speaking, these P's mean passive. That was kind of a dumb way to document that, but that's how I did it. So Cyclone is now 100% of weapon damage and 50% slow for 3 seconds. These two abilities have been killed. And Deadly Reach is now increases crit chance by 10% instead of 15% damage on heavy attacks against targets that are 3 meters away. So instead, it's a 10% increased crit chance. It's a roll of the dice instead of a flat damage increase. The rest of this stuff I don't think was too changed. And then in the Impaler tree, that was considerably changed. This passive was killed. This passive was killed. This piece of this was killed, kind of. I'll go on that in a second. So Perforate is now 70% of weapon damage. And if all 3 hits land, target is staggered. So that's what Impactful Strikes does now. It has a built-in possible stagger if you hit with all 3 strikes. And Rupturing Strikes, now 10% rend bonus. And that's reducing targets' ability to their armor. It reduces their armor. And no rend if the target is less than 50% hit points. So It's not a finisher, that's more of an opener. So Perforate looks like more of an opener, and a finisher would be more like doing more to you when you're low health. Let's see here. Skewer. Skewer has changed. It's now 10% weapon damage bleed, and it ticks once per second, and it's 125% weapon damage, the actual attack. Of course, that wasn't listed on the original text anyway, but the key thing is this here, 15% weapon damage every 2 seconds for 10 seconds is now 10% weapon damage. So less weapon damage, but it's every second, so it's actually more damage. So this is going to be like an aggressive bleed. Okay, so Deadly Ambush, 20% damage against targets who have full health. Obviously an opener. Follow Through. This has been renamed to Follow Through. It's now 20% Empower for 10 seconds on critical hit. And Empower makes you do more damage. Deep Wound is increased bleed duration to 15 seconds. So that was rewritten. I can't remember what it used to do. Refreshing Bloodlust is gone. And Relentless Blows. Actually, let's go to this one. Vault Kick. Vault Kick used to be you planted your spear and did a kick, and it did significant stamina damage, which it still does, apparently. And I'm not an alpha tester, so I'm going by the patch notes, by the way. Just to be clear, I can't test any of this. And if I could, I couldn't talk about it. So there you go. And it applies a 50% exhaust for 6 seconds. So it used to apply an exhaust for 6 seconds. Now the exhaust has been replaced with a 1.5 second stun. So that's kind of cool. So it's 75% weapon damage, and it stuns the target for 1.5 seconds, which is great for getting like a quick backstab or something. And the first upgrade to that has been renamed to Relentless Blows. It's 20% Empower for 5 seconds after hitting a target that has less than 50% hit points. So this is more of a closer. It gives you 20% increased damage, or empowers an increased damage buff. I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 percentage conversion, but it's 20% Empower, and Empower is damage increase after hitting a target that has less than 50% hit points. So if you vault kick somebody that has less than 50% hit points, you just stun them for 1.5 seconds, and you gave yourself a damage buff. Obviously a closer. Continuous Motion is the last ability on that. 30% cooldown reduction on other spear moves, so it recharges some of your other spear moves. So yeah, that's the gist of Spear. Now there were 9, I believe, 9 passives that they did. They told us the names of them, but they didn't tell us what they do. And I didn't really add up this tree. I have looked at it briefly, but with 9 of the skills completely undocumented, it was kind of hard to get too excited. I mean, I like this tree. I'm kind of excited to try this, but because I've never played with Spear, I've only played in preview. I'd love to play this tree, but unfortunately, I can't. I don't know what the passives and stuff do, so that's unfortunate. Archery, major changes. Major changes. Okay. So Evade Shot has been moved from second row to first row. So you got your 1, you got your 2, which means Poison Shot or you got your 1, you got your 3, which means Poison Shot's going to be a 2. That's what that arrow signifies. That's how I know that. Okay. So Evade Shot now has a leap back from the target while shooting an arrow. And then the first thing you can get is jump back shots have an added knockback on hit. So it's a narrower tree. They killed this. And it said in the notes there's a go the distance passive there. However, they didn't tell us anything about what it is. And if you add up all the skills that they told us about with all the skills they didn't tell us are removed, it's way more than you're supposed to have. I think a lot of these passives, actually, these old passives are actually not there anymore. So that's just my opinion. I don't think those are there anymore, but I can't prove it. Whoops. You only get to pick 19 skills is what I wrote here. Okay, so Huntsman's been renamed to Skirmisher. Bowman's been renamed to Hunter. Evade Shot's been moved to the first row. All these passives are gone, which used to be a big part of what was good about Archery. Actually, I'll cover Poison Shot next because it's the number 2 passive, or active. It creates a cloud of poison where the arrow lands. So you can fire an arrow. If it hits the ground, it makes a cloud of poison, and anything in the area of effect is poisoned. However, the first upgrade, poison deals more damage per tick, so it makes it more dangerous poison. And then upgrade 2, which they didn't tell us the name for, I think that was an oversight in the patch notes. It says if you directly hit, it deals 200% more damage. So you can fire your poison arrow, like going out of your way to hit somebody, make sure you hit them, and you do 200% more damage. Now, what's not clear is it 200% of shot damage, whatever that happens to be, because again, we don't know that, or does it make the poison tick for 200% damage? The other question is, does poison scale off of int? Because I think it does. So it creates all these very interesting mechanics where you could potentially have an archer that is good with dex and good with int. Like int helps them. Because if they're like a mage archer, for example, the poison shot, the int would scale that potentially. I believe it does, but I don't know that. And then the question is this 200% more poison damage? Because that could be a very significant thing if the entire poison cloud is 200% increased, which I kind of doubt would be the case, but it's something that I wish they'd clarify. Okay. The new ultimate is a passive for this tree. It's called Knee Shot. All leg shots cause 30% slow for 3 seconds. So you can effectively just sit there pegging. It doesn't say anything about a internal cooldown, so I guess you just can keep pegging somebody and making them slower, keep them slow. Of course, you only have 3 seconds, so if you miss a shot, they're going to be running. And then the passives, they didn't tell us which row these are on, but these are the passives that they added. Catch me if you can. If surrounded by 3 or more foes within 3 meters, you gain 33% haste. Impale, if you hit a foe with 100% health, cause 30% slow for 2 seconds. Closing in, hitting a foe below 50% health reduces bow ability recharge by 5%. And I think recharge is cooldown, basically. Dodge and weave. Gain 20% haste for 5 seconds after you dodge. Very similar to ability that used to exist, which is why dodge power, which used to increase... actually, that's not the one. Dodge speed. Over here. That's why I'm thinking this passive is probably gone, but they didn't tell us it's gone. I think this one's gone, though. So we'll just say that one's probably gone. And it's been effectively moved to this tree and changed a little bit. It's not a 50% speed boost. It is 20% haste for 5 seconds. Oh, that's a different one. 20% haste after you dodge for 5 seconds. And it used to be 50% for 2 seconds and in the other tree. Okay. Hunter Insight. Hitting a foe with a debuff grants 5 stamina. Archer Speed. Gain 20% haste for 5 seconds when you swap to your bow. 10-second internal cooldown. That's kind of exciting. You got to pull out your bow and all of a sudden you're moving really fast. I'm sure people are going to have fun with that. Also, I'm sure people will use that to travel. Mark. Deal 10% more damage to foes suffering from a debuff. Again, something that benefits from people being debuffed. Battle Precision. Debuffs gain 20% duration. Now, what's not clear here is whether this is only archery debuffs, as in while you have your bow equipped, any debuff you apply is 20% longer, or if having your bow and as your off weapon but equipped, if this is a global passive. It's impossible to tell. That's something you'd have to test. Then the ones they kept were dodge power. And when I say they kept, I don't think they actually kept them. I think they just didn't write very good patch notes. Increase the damage by 10% for 5 seconds after a dodge. Head splitter was a 10% headshot damage increase, and slow legs. Leg shots reduce target's run speed for 3 seconds. Max of 5 stacks. Do you see why I don't think that one's still there, considering the ultimate is that, but better? I just don't think that they have 2 passives that do that. I just don't. Okay, so anyway, your 1 is evade, your 2 is poison shot, and your 3 is penetrating shot. Oh, I didn't cover penetrating shot. So now that's totally different because I killed the other passives or upgrades. It fires an arrow that goes through all targets till it hits terrain. It then, if you have the first upgrade, it increases damage by 20% after each hit, which is the opposite of what it used to do. It used to penetrate and do 20%, I think it was 20% less damage every target it went through. So you can get an upgrade that makes it do 20% more with each target it goes through. And then you can get another one 20% more damage on targets more than 20 meters away. So you could snipe at a group of guys from like far away and do potentially a lot of damage. So that's an interesting one. Okay, and the Hunter Tree. Obviously, it's been more or less gutted. And they said that... what did they say? I forget why I put this on row 3, but I think it was because it was the only one that fit. I think that's why I did that. Okay, so Splinter Shot used to be Spread Shot, and basically the issue with it was pretty abusable. You could make it split for 5 arrows, which this one does too, but it was like immediate. So you could hit somebody at like close range and just drill them in the head with 5 headshots. So now what they've done is they made it so that it splits into 3 arrows at 10 meters. And I'm not sure, but I don't think it tells you how far your target is away. I looked at some of my old videos of just gameplay footage I was playing in a preview event, and I don't recall it saying how far away your target is. So you could get good at firing your shots and knowing exactly what 10 meters looks like, but it's certainly going to be much more skilled than it used to be, where it used to be you could just kind of drill somebody at point blank range and 5x headshot them. And then the first upgrade to that makes it a 5x shot, and then the next upgrade makes it reduce the cooldown by 10% per hit. So yeah, that's probably going to be a very skilled ability to use it like it used to be used, because you have to be able to determine when you're exactly that far away, which honestly I don't think is likely. Rain of Arrows, it's a 2 meter AoE. So you just basically fire at 2 meters around wherever it hits, as a bunch of arrows come down. And the first upgrade causes bleeding damage, dealing 85% damage over 12 seconds, so damage over time. And the next upgrade does 30% slow for 4 seconds. So you can slow down your targets. I think that's probably to just keep them from running out of it. Then Rapidshot used to be over here. So I just moved the icon over to here because it's been moved here. I'm trying to remember, but I believe it said that this one got moved to row 2. And so I, from that, deduced that this one got moved to row 3. Anyway, so it fires 3 arrows really fast, and the last one is charged, so it's a little shorter, or it takes a little longer to fire that one. And the first upgrade, if all 3 arrows hit, Rapidshot's cooldown is reduced by 50%. And the second upgrade, third shot of Rapidshot deals 50% extra damage. I can see that being potentially powerful. The ultimate is a passive, but it's not the same as it used to be. The new one is, it's called Concussion, and headshots do 20% more damage, 50% reduction to arrow use. So you have a 50% chance to get your arrow back if you hit them in the head, and you have that passive. Also, it does 20% more damage. That's cool. I like that. And the other passives for this tree, long range, deal 20% more damage to foes at least 10 meters away, which interestingly enough is the same distance as Splinter Shot. So if you get really good at judging that distance, you could potentially give yourself a 20% bonus on those 5 headshots. That could be potentially very powerful. But like I said, you'd have to be pretty good to use it. Aim true. Heavy attacks. Arrows fly faster and deal 30% more damage. Finishing shot. If your target is below 50% health, deal 20% more damage. Unbreakable focus. Receive 20% less damage while aiming. Opening strike. Heavy attacks deal 20% damage to foes with 100% hit points. So that's an opener. Just making your heavy attacks better for opening. Surprise attack. If you haven't damaged a foe in the last 10 seconds, deal 20% extra damage. Arrow range. Increase arrow distance before start of gravity by 100%. So that just lets you fire further with accuracy. Hawkeye. When you land headshots, heal yourself for 10% of damage done. That could be potentially very powerful. I could see that being very, very powerful. And Bullseye. Bow shots. Critical chance increased by 10%. All right, so there you go. And dodge speed, I think, is actually not still in the game. But that's just my best guess. Archery, I think, is pretty interesting. I'm kind of itching to try it. That's one of the ones I enjoyed in a preview event. Okay, Fire Mage. This one's changed significantly. Most of them have. Okay. So Pillar of Fire is still there in the first row, but its upgrades have changed. So it's still a quick cast spell that releases an AoE Fire Blast. And then its first ability is First Strike, 40% damage increase to enemies at 100% health. Arson's Advantage is the next upgrade. Regain 10 mana per enemy hit by this ability. Now they said Meteor Shower has been moved, but I think they said it was moved to the second row, which I think is wrong because it was already in the second row. But Meteor Shower is a channel spell that drops large meteors on the area. And the first upgrade, the upgrades have all been changed. First upgrade is called Immolation. Hits of Meteor Shower refund 1 mana each. Determination gains unstoppable while casting meteors. So it's Grit. It basically means you can't be interrupted while you're throwing down meteors. You can be killed, but you can't be interrupted. So you can just keep the meteors going. And the last upgrade is Judgment of Helios. Causes 25% more meteors to hit during the entire channel. Then Fireball replaces Siege, and it shoots a heavy fireball, which to me, the fact that they said it's a heavy fireball implies that it's affected by gravity. So this is kind of like a mortar shell, I think. Just guessing. And it deals damage on impact and leaves behind a 3-meter burning field of impact, or at impact. First upgrade is Scorched Earth. Burning Zone persists for 9 seconds. And the second upgrade is called Catch. Direct hits refund 10 mana and reduce cooldown by 10%. So that's probably not super easy to hit with, I'm thinking, because I'm thinking it's a lob attack. So that's going to be a skill shot, but nevertheless, I think it'll be pretty strong. And the ultimate for that tree is a passive called Runes of Helios. Casting a spell places a rune on the ground, increasing that spell's damage and all subsequent damage by 30% for 7 seconds. 30 seconds internal cooldown. So that gets triggered every 30 seconds basically. Or your next cast after 30 seconds since it's been triggered, is what I meant. And the passives for that tree, I'll zoom in a bit. Spell Focus, heavy attacks restore 5% of your max mana on hit. Heavy Restoration, heavy attacks reduce Fire Staff cooldowns by 10% on hit. Clear Mind, while above 50% mana, you gain 10% Empower, and Empowering increases your damage. Flare, heavy attacks no longer consume mana. Singe applies burning, dealing 3% weapon damage each second for 6 seconds when you crit while holding a Fire Staff. So your crits effectively light things on fire. Spellslinger, your abilities gain an extra 15% chance to hit. Clear Casting, deal 10% more damage if you haven't taken damage in the last 3 seconds. And Prophet of the Fire God, which used to be this ability right over here in the other tree, it's been changed and moved. Now critical strikes damage is increased by 35% while holding a Fire Staff. So it's a passive in the other tree now. Now so this tree is more about damage casting spells. The other tree, Pyromancer, is more about lighting things on fire. So Flamethrower has had its upgrades rewritten, and a lot of these passives have been removed as well. Flamethrower, a cone AoE flame ability that can ignite targets. That's what it does. It's like, if you've ever seen it, it looks like basically a cone fire coming out of the staff. First upgrade, Fire's Reach, increases the range of Flamethrower by 50%. Internal Flames increases base damage of Flamethrower by 25%. And Pyrodancer, Flamethrower has no cooldown. That's a huge change, because that means in conjunction with the ability to get mana, you can effectively use that as dumping mana to hit to damage anytime. So that's a cool change. The reason that's interesting is the ultimate passive, Reheat, gain 500% mana regeneration after going 5 seconds without using an active ability. Now, it doesn't say without firing. I think you can sit there drilling a target with greater attacks while you wait for this to trigger and give you 500% mana regeneration. I'm not sure, but I think that's how that works. They didn't say anything about this ability, which is basically your guy darts in a direction, kind of like a teleport, with a trail of flames behind him. So I'm going to assume that ability hasn't changed. And Incinerate, they said these moved, so I'm assuming these two flipped. The thing that actually they can't have flipped because they both have 4 passives. So the thing they didn't put in the patch notes, see, 4 passives takes it into the ultimate slot, but the ultimate's a passive. So it can't be an upgrade for one of these abilities, which means one of these is 1, one of these is 2. Since they said they both moved, I would assume Incinerate is your 1, Flamethrower is your 2, and then this ability has been moved to 3, and it does not have an ultimate. It just goes, it starts here at 3. But they didn't say that in the patch notes. I just deduced that from, it has to be, because that's how the system works. Okay, so that's interesting. Then Incinerate. It's a point-blank AoE fire wave. And the first upgrade is now called Scorched. It applies additional stacks of burning. Cauterize Wounds restores 30% of damage dealt by Incinerate. And then the last upgrade is called Flame Out, and you cast Incinerate twice, and the second cast is 50% effective. Now, the thing I'm curious about, as this is written, I would assume that both casts apply the additional stacks of burning. So this isn't just hitting everything twice, it's hitting everything twice and applying a bunch of burning stacks. At least that's what I think it's saying. Something to check out. And this ability here is still there, apparently. That if you're hit, it has like a internal cooldown, but if you're hit, sometimes it bursts out fire and hits stuff. And the passives they added, one's called Heat Up, restores 5% of max mana when you block a melee attack. Then there's Let It Burn, gain Fortify for 2 seconds whenever burn deals damage. Fortify reduces damage taken, so it makes you more tanky. And because this is like lighting things on fire, tree, it makes sense that it's also more tanky. Kindle, burning lasts 20% longer. Watch It Burn, light attacks apply burning and dealing 3% weapon damage every second for 6 seconds. Combat speed, gain 20% haste for 3 seconds when you activate a Fire Staff ability, and it has a 10-second internal cooldown. So that's interesting too. So just simply activating any of these abilities, one of which doesn't have a cooldown, gives you 20% speed. So this effectively means you can be running around with your Fire Staff out and turning on your Flamethrower to travel. Granted, you're limited by your mana, but then you just stop casting and this thing regenerates your mana, and then you use your Flamethrower to travel some more. that could be very entertaining to watch. But that's what I think that's saying. And then Pyromania, 20% damage while below 50% health. So when you're low health, you do more damage. And that's the fire tree as I understand it. And I'll zoom back out so you can see the whole thing if you want to pause it and zoom in on your browser to kind of take it all in. I'm sure a lot of you are like me, you're trying to theory craft this stuff. And the next one, Life Staff. Okay, this one was changed completely again. So you have your healing and your protection. Not to be confused with your protector, which became healing, and life stealer, which became protection. I think there were some mistakes on this tree, and I can't remember what they were, but maybe I'll remember while I'm talking about it. I'm not going to talk about what's been removed, because basically everything. Okay, so there's an ability called Splash of Light. It's either 1 or 2. I'm thinking it's the 1. You and all group members are healed for 50% of your weapon damage. Then the first upgrade, Shared Recovery. You gain 3 mana if you heal a target below 50% health. And then the third upgrade is called Purify. Splash of Light also removes all debuffs from healed players. That, of course, would be a hard counter for a strategy involved debuffing somebody and peppering them with throwing axes, that kind of thing. The next one, Sacred Ground, I'm assuming that's number 2 because of what it does. I'm thinking it takes the role of this. Create a shield on the ground that heals allies standing in it for 10% weapon damage every 12 seconds. Allies regenerate, and it doesn't say how long it lasts, so I don't know what the duration looks like. Holy Ground is the first upgrade to that. Allies regenerate stamina and mana by 100% while in Sacred Ground. And Blessed, while allies are in Sacred Ground, they are healed for 20% more from all heals. So that's kind of cool because if you're in a situation where you're in a shootout with another group, like at a siege or something, you can put down the Sacred Ground and people can be dropping heals in the Sacred Ground and their heals are going to be more effective in that area. Of course, that's an area that's going to get focus fired, but as long as you can out heal the damage, you're in good shape. Okay, Divine Embrace. This ability has been rewritten. It's an AoE burst heal around the target. And that one, as of last patch notes I've read, is targetable, meaning you can tab target that one effectively. And the first upgrade is now called Privilege. It reduces Divine Embrace mana cost to 25. Next upgrade is called Shared Struggle. Heal one additional ally within 8 meters for the same amount if the target is below 50% health. So it's a bounce heal. And then the second upgrade, which they didn't name, does the same thing. It could very well be called Shared Struggle again. That used to be how this worked over here with the this was called, what was it called? Speed of Light. And then it had 2 upgrades that had the same name. They could have done the same thing here. It could be just called Shared Struggle, Shared Struggle. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Okay, then the ultimate for this tree is a passive called Divine Blessing. When you heal an ally, heal for 30% more if their health is below 50%. Of course, if you have this passive and you're doing the whole we're healing an area with Sacred Ground and you're just dropping heals, abilities like this make it a lot harder to punch through. That area can very well become a safe zone. Then the passives there, healing passives are absolved. Life Staff, light and heavy attacks no longer take mana. Mending Touch, Life Staff's heavy attack now removes all debuffs when hitting an ally. Blissful Touch, light attacks now heals for 20% weapon damage when hitting an ally. Revitalize, when you hit with a light attack, reduce all your cooldowns by 5%. Desperate Speed, when you heal an ally with less than 50% health, all Life Staff cooldowns are reduced by 10%. And Sacred Protection, while holding a Life Staff, increase the base health of all friendlies in your group by 10%. And Intensify, heavy attacks give you increased healing for 10% or by 10% for 10 seconds, max of 3 stacks. Need a drink of water. Okay, then in the protection tree, it used to be the Life Stealer tree. Obviously, it got gutted. It doesn't tell you which of these is 1, 2, and 3. I put them in this order because I think this is 1, 2, 3. Orb of Protection. Shoot a light projectile that grants 20% Fortify for 20 seconds if it hits an ally and deals 85% weapon damage to an enemy. So whatever it hits, if it's a friendly, it does the one thing, and if it's an enemy, it does the damage. Protector's Blessing grants 15% Empower for 10 seconds. That's the thing that increases your damage. So it grants 15% Empower for 10 seconds to an ally hit by Orb of Protection. So if you hit the ally, you gave him Fortify and Empower. It's kind of a big deal. Then Shared Protection, gain 20% Fortify for 20 seconds if you hit an ally. So now you're giving it to yourself as well, the Fortify piece. And an Aegis affects all allies and enemies within 3 meters of the target when projectile hits. So now, if I'm understanding that correctly, that's not just I hit a friendly or a foe, that's I hit an area. So you hit something, it explodes with a 3-meter blast radius, and any ally gets all these buffs, and any foe gets 85% weapon damage. I think that's what that means. So that's probably strong. Beacon. Shoot out a projectile that creates a healing area on hit that moves with the target. Healing area heals allies for 10% weapon damage each second. But it moves with the target. So you can hit somebody with that's in a fight and they're running around and it's going to heal them and anyone near them. So if people stay together, they're getting healed. Infused Lights, the first upgrade of that, increases the area of beacon by 50%. So bigger AoE, bigger aura of healing around whoever you hit that with, or hit with that. Radiance Blessing, beacon lasts 5 seconds longer. And Speed of Light is an upgrade to that beacon now applies 30% haste for 3 seconds. So it just makes them run really fast. So you can make a whole group run really fast for 3 seconds. Not sure that's really that relevant. I can't think of a context where that makes sense. So I'm thinking that might not be one I pick. Light's Embrace. Targeted heal for 75% of weapon damage, plus 50% more healing for each buff on the target. So that's a heal that increases its healing by a lot when a target has buffs. And of course, you're applying buffs here. That's pretty powerful, I think. But it's more of a 1-2 punch. Inspire, target receives 25% 25 stamina. Connection, gain 1% mana for each buff that the target player has. Magnify, Light's Embrace extends life stabs buffs by 2 seconds. So you can make your buffs last longer. But it's specifically Light's Embrace. Okay, it adds 2 seconds to any buffs on the target when they're hit with Light's Embrace. So you could apply 2 buffs to somebody if you have all these upgrades with your Orb of Protection, because you're giving them Empower and you're giving them Fortify and Empower. And then you can then increase the duration of those by 2 seconds while healing them for a lot of heal. But only if it happens in the time frame. I believe these two are intended to be working together, because you've got 10 seconds on this one and then 20 seconds on this one. So you could potentially heal a target that has these buffs for a substantial amount. Okay, and the passives for that tree are Bend Light. Your heals are 20% more effective for 5 seconds after a dodge roll. Defensive Light. Gain 5% of your max mana when you block a melee attack. Protector's Touch. Life Staff light and heavy attacks grant 15% Fortify for 3 seconds when hitting an enemy. And Fortify reduces the incoming damage. Protector's Strength. Heal for 10% more if you have a buff. So that's good, because you get the 10% buff there for the buff you gave yourself while healing somebody, getting a buff from this to your heal. See how that chains? There's a whole bunch of that going on in this tree. Balance, gain 20% haste for 5 seconds when you get hit while below 50% hit points. Not sure how relevant that one is. Glowing Focus, buffs you grant last 20% longer. Obviously, that's really good if your whole deal is you are buffing things. When you get an extra 4 seconds there, that's pretty relevant, I think. All right, so that's that tree for the most part. I'll zoom out a bit so you can take it all in if you so choose. And I guess I didn't include slides for some of the others. Okay, so they didn't say a lot that I felt was particularly stuff I can talk to on some of the other weapons. Like Musket, they changed some things. They removed Feign Death. I thought that was pretty relevant. I can jump over to it here. And Musket. A lot of it, they weren't very specific. They didn't give a whole lot of details on it. So they try to explain why they did what they did, but they don't tell you much. They took Power Shot's buff out of Shooter Stance so that they could make Power Shot hit harder without having it OP when it's used with Shooter Stance. So those two are out. Play Dead's been replaced by Powder Burn, which is a shot that lights targets on fire. They did some things to traps that kind of nerfed them, but at the same time, basically fewer traps you can throw, but at the same time they're can throw them more frequently. So they're trying to basically encourage people to use them actively in combat. Sticky bombs, you can only do one now, but the cooldown shorter. I don't know. They didn't say anything about the passives that get you up to 38 masteries in the tree. So it's not really clear what they've done there. I feel like there's a whole bunch of information they left out, and I'm thinking they aren't actually done designing it yet. That's my opinion based on what they said. Also, I didn't say anything about Warhammer. The gist of it is they removed a bunch of things. They removed the CC lock stuff that people would do, and they didn't say a whole lot about what else they did. They talked about things they removed, but they didn't talk about what they added to get them up to 38 masteries. So, like with a musket, I can't really speak intelligently about this because, first of all, I don't know a whole lot about Warhammer. But beyond that, it's really, they haven't told us much. They just told us a few things they changed and left it at that. Okay, so with that, I think that's enough. I mean, shoot, that was almost an hour. No wonder my throat's dry. But yeah, that's the gist of what's going on. And again, if you want to look at a skill builder to see what things used to do, newworldbuilds.com/builder. And that's all I have for this.